Today I'm going to be giving my speech on the history of filmmaking and its diversity throughout the decades. So starting in the 1800s, the closest thing that they had to film was when they would take multiple images and they would move them very quickly to create an illusion that the picture itself was moving. In 1872, the first movie was created of a man riding a horse using 12 different images, and when they put them all together, it looked like the horse was running. In 1885, motion photography was created, and shortly after, cinematography was created, which is where they would move the film by cranking a wheel. In the early 1900s, there were great advancements when making movies, so they started to focus on things like editing, backdrops, and good visual flow. In 1903, the movie The Great Train Robbery was created, which was very popular in the 1900s. In 1905, Nickelodeon was created, which was where the public could come and watch these movies, and it was called Nickelodeon because it only cost a nickel to come and get in. In the early 1900s, World War I and the movie-making industry went hand in hand because the movie-making industry created propaganda for the war. In the 1910s, Hollywood created their first film with D.W. Griffith, and Charlie Chaplin was very popular at the time, and he was known mostly for his humor. In the 1920s, the idea of being a movie star was a very big thing. Movies became known for their directors and their stars, and directors made names for themselves through trademarking personal styles. On April 4th, 1923, the Warner Brothers created the very first filmmaking studio in the United States. The 1930s was considered the golden age for the filmmaking industry, and 65% of the population reported that they saw at least one movie a week. Movies were now created with sound, which helped give them genres. Actors like Lawrence Oliver, Shirley Temple, and John Ford were very popular at the time. In the 1940s, America was going through a very tough time due to Pearl Harbor. Despite this, the movie-making industry was doing great because of things like special effects, sound quality, and they now had color. In response to World War II, this increased productivity for the movie-making industry because of the propaganda. In 1946, movie theaters had an all-time high attendance and profits. The movie The Adventures of Tom Sawyer was the first feature-length color film produced by a Hollywood studio. In the 1950s, there was a big culture change and people focused on things like pop culture and now television. By 1950, about 10 million Americans had a TV in their home. Movie-making industry focused on the youth and created movies with rebellion and rock and roll. Edgier stars came about, like James Dean, Ava Gardner, Marlon Brando, and Marilyn Monroe, and Hollywood began to make TV productions. In the 1960s, there was a big social change, and people focused on fun, fashion, rock and roll, and civil rights. The perception of America was constantly changing because of the Vietnam War and the power change. In 1963, the movie-making industry had its slowest year, with just 120 movies, which is as low as the amount of movies they made in the 1920s. Profits for theaters were so low because of television, and the film began to focus on things like music records, movies for TV, and the invention of TV series. Theater tickets were as low as $1 at this time. In the 1970s, the film industry hit a depression that had been growing for 25 years. Film studios looked for different ways to make money, like Disney creating a theme park. What was considered the golden age was now over. Because of this, they tried to be creative with their movies and take more risks because they had hit rock bottom. These risks led to the rebirth with high-action, youth-oriented movies like Jaws and Star Wars that made a lot of profits. Also in the 1970s, VHS video players, Laserdisc players, and films on video cassette tapes and discs were created. In the 1980s, the highest-grossing film was E.T. Movies were all very similar in the 1980s, but they were more marketable, understandable, and culturally accessible. They were considered simple entertainment, but it also was very profitable. Special effects made movies more expensive to make, so they started filming them in other countries. Lots of big stars came about in the 1980s. In the 1990s, the highest-grossing film was Titanic. Movies were very expensive to make because of movie stars, agency fees, rising production costs, advertising campaigns, and crew threats to strike. Video rentals were created, and they made more money than ticket sales for movies. Also, DVDs were created in the 90s in 1997. In the 2000s, Blu-ray and IMAX theaters were created. With the inventions of smartphones, tablets, computers, and other technology, streaming came about with Netflix. Because of Netflix's success, other streaming companies became very popular, and that is what we mostly use today. Thank you so much for your time. Bye.